Well, that's our next focus. But the AFDP also reporting that Nigeria, alongside some other African countries, are losing 50 billion naira annually to illicit financial flows, the IFF. Well, this time we've got Mr. Shola Ogundeyi, who is a financial consultant. He's also a chartered accountant. He joins us via Skype from the UK. Good morning, and thank you for joining us. Speaking about this IFFs, it's a huge concern here. And, you know, they talk about the fact that when it's got to do with perhaps politically exposed persons and the funds that they pilfer from the coffers of states, the West jumps on the back and says, yes, go on. But if it comes to this particular IFFs, of which some of their companies are involved, they tend to shy away, as several persons have said in that conference here. Could you give us a sense of perception? What is the thinking over there in terms of what Africa, particularly Nigeria, likes to do or seek their cooperation in bringing those funds that were taken out of this country illegally back to the country?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me on this program. Definitely, when you look at the issue on ground, you'll find it that it's been a long time that we've been talking about this IFF. And the one thing that we have to understand is just to know what actually is IFF. And when you look at it, you find it that it's just about taking money legally from vulnerable countries. I call it vulnerable countries because why? The system in place to tackle it were not being implemented as like in developed countries where we have here in UK. And that's why you find it that this IFF is solely about tax evasion, it's about money laundering, and also it's about corruption. And these are so rife in developing countries as against what we have in developed countries. So there are some laws that are being put in place to checkmate this one even here in United Kingdom. But by and large, you still find it that over the years, about 30 or 40 years, developing nations in Africa have lost close to about 1.4 trillion US dollars to what we call IFF, illicit financial flow. And the responsibility of government is to ensure that all this money that has been lost can be plowed back to these African nations, but depends on what actually nations can do together to make this money back to African nations.
Yeah, but Mr. Goody, if they've got that architecture and all those frameworks to ensure the trace, track, and prevent some of them from going out, why are they then reported to be reluctant to get those monies back to Nigeria, for instance?
But I can tell you authoritatively, that's for last year, 2017, the UK government enacted some laws that will help African nations to ensure that this money are repatriated back to their countries. And one of them is the one that was set up by the Home Office, that was the last Home Office Secretary, Ambarud, that eventually about 6 policy framework of how to get this money repatriated back to country, to the developing countries that the money were in first instance taken out. But one thing I want to assure you is that, you know, it's all about the government coming together. It's all about collaboration. It's all about looking at it and looking at how can, you know, the government here in United Kingdom help, you know, our government. It is not really easy, you know, when you talk about repatriation of the funds, in the sense that certain things have to be put in place, certain things have to be agreed, agreements have to be signed, and also the government will want to know to a certain extent what happened in Switzerland recently, when some money were repatriated back to Nigeria during, you know, the last government, before this new government. What was the money used for? And that is why you find it that there was a condition that was set for any money from Switzerland for illicit funds to be repatriated back to Nigeria in the first instance, what did they want to do with the money? So one thing that I think the UK government wants Nigeria or that African nation to do is to ensure that a right framework is put in place when this money are repatriated back to the developing nations. What are they going to use them to do?
All right, we'll come back and take a look at maybe one or two case studies in just a moment. Don't go away. Welcome back, Mr. Gunde. Now, let's talk about solutions. The government is suggesting a three-step flow strategy. They're also looking to see how they could strengthen cross-border flow of criminal activity such that these funds wouldn't leave the country as much, or reducing it, if not stem the tide completely. And then they also suggested that there has to be this international outreach, such that it will get that desired attention so we can get some results. But how do you suggest we leverage on international corporations such as the OECD, the G10 and the G20 groups, the G8 and G20 groups, so that we leverage on that and get some results?
Yes, I think it's not too far-fetched. It all depends how serious the government is. And I think like the government of Nigeria, under the leadership of President Muhammadu Buhari, for the first time in this nation, in Nigerian nation, is tackling this issue. And I could just flash back your mind to when it was in UK, because we are watching the situation in Nigeria, especially in terms of corporate governance and then good governance, and in terms of the managing the resources of Nigeria. I want to tell you that Nigeria, in this environment in the world, especially in the developed environment in the world, look at Nigeria as a rich nation. It's just the highest per capita income in Africa, and due to what? To all exports. But why have the all exports been managed? That is the issue. So going now to international collaboration, what the international community is trying to do is that to get the understanding of how relevant and effective that the government will be able to prosecute, to agree, and to eventually implement all the conditions that has to work with prudency of the national wealth. And the only thing the government can do in this situation, as has been done now, I think, is to show the seriousness in tackling every area whereby this illegal financial flow is being taken out of the country. And one of the situations that happens to Nigeria as a nation is to be firm about it and be consistent about it. And that's when the international community will see the nation so serious about it. So one thing I would say that it is seriousness of the government that matters. And secondly, also how they are able to assure where this money has been repatriated to, when it's given to them, to be able to implement it very well. Because in most cases, it's not the trust that matters.
All right, Shola Ogunde, financial consultant and a chartered accountant, thank you for talking to us today on the program. So there you go, that's the show today. We thank you all for watching. We'll see you next week. I'm Chamberlain Usal.
I'm Gimba Umar.
I'm Naota Igbe.
The views and opinions expressed by guests on this program are those of the maker and do not necessarily reflect the views, opinions, and endorsement of Channels Television.